Streaming from Ohio. Streaming from Ohio.
Streaming from Ohio to the world. You're listening to HonorCast with your host, Tommy Miller. Interviewing the greats to become greater.
Hey everybody, welcome to HonorCast. Our guest today is an extremely well-known sage in the area of Christianity and masculinity. He's a best-selling author, a counselor, a teacher, and the president of Ransomed Heart Ministries. You probably know him from a few of his popular titles, Wild at Heart and Beautiful Outlaw, and you can learn more about the resources that he has available at ransomedheart.com and johneldredge.com, ELDREDGE.com. John Eldredge, welcome to HonorCast.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. Looking forward to chatting with you.
So I just wrapped up, I'm going to say within the last 2 weeks, your latest release called Get Your Life Back. Would you kind of just tell us where we can get that book, first of all?
Yeah, so johneldredge.com will get you there, or, Amazon, wherever you get your books. Get Your Life Back. Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad.
I love the subtitle. So Paul Edwards, who you recently did a podcast with, is actually the one that suggested this book to me. He has become a friend of mine and a mentor. And just to be transparent, my wife and I are extremely busy people. We start at about 6 a.m. We usually get done working at about 10 p.m. And then we might, enjoy an hour or two on the couch together, watching our favorite show or just spending some time together. What you don't realize.
That's full tilt, man.
Yeah, it's full tilt. And I'm sure you know exactly what that's like. But what you don't realize is you go from those 8-hour work days and you just slowly start to add things, and you slowly start to allow things and slowly start to push boundaries away. And then before you know it, your life's completely gone. So this book has helped me tremendously. And the COVID-19 that actually helped me implement and reset some of those things. But for somebody that's just picking the book up, would you give us an idea of what this book would do for them in somebody's case like me?
Well, we need a way out of the chaos. We need a way out of the madness, and the madness before COVID. So pre-Pearl Harbor, post Pearl Harbor, right?
Sure.
Pre-COVID, we were all way too plugged in. We were running at light speed, just trying to keep up and stay on top of a pretty complicated world. Most people's lives just got real complicated and real fast. And part of that was because of the lie of the technology. When we all got really plugged in, the lie was, hey man, this smartphone and using Slack and, doing these things online and your social connections, you're going to have more margin. You're going to, this is all built around giving you more room, to enjoy your life. But what happened, of course, was the exact opposite. And we all ended up asking our souls to run at the speed of smartphones. And it's just brutal. It's just brutal. And now post or mid or wherever we are, it's not post, but now into the pandemic and the global chaos. The problem is we're actually all more plugged in. And, anybody working from home is working on technology, and all the lines are blurred. That's the problem, because at least you used to have your commute, and you get on the train or the metro, or you get in your car, and you got a little bit of transition space between what was kind of like your workspace and your home space. And there was transition, in the morning going and then coming home. All that's gone. And it's all just blurring into one thing. And it's really brutal on our humanity. Really brutal.
I don't think until you articulated that I realized that the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic had actually made it harder to get your life back. Everyone thinks that they're slowing down, but what they don't realize is they're really just being overtaken. You mentioned the word transitioning. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to expound, because that was one of my favorite chapters in the book. and one of the things that I was doing poorly. So, um, I guess I'll start slow. What is transitioning, and how do you practice it? I'd say just practically, what's that look like?
Yeah. What I noticed is that my whole life just became one speed, and it was just on. It was just go.
Yep.
There was no gear changes. There was no like downshifting, upshifting, kind of the natural ebb and flow of human life. It was just go, and there was no transitions. I'd go from a really, really intense meeting where maybe there was some hostility and some acrimony. And then I go into lunch with a friend and try and connect and get some soul time there and crack each other up. But then it was just straight back into a phone call with my insurance agent, and it's haggling over, and then it's into my house, and now I'm trying to be a husband. And it was just all one. There's no stop. There's no
Right.
grace. There's nothing between it. And then like the dramatic places were, we went through a couple of big losses. We lost our first grandchild, actually buried my first grandchild. And then we lost a young man in our church community, way too young. And the world just asks you to just keep going. Like,
Right.
so you're going to be at work. You're going to be at work tomorrow, right? And it's like, it's madness. It's like there's no transition. There's no place to go. Okay, that was devastating, and you now need to give yourself some room
Sure.
in order to, the corporate policy for bereavement leave in the U.S. is 3 days.
That's outrageous.
You lost your dad, your mom to cancer, and you got 3 days, and then people just expect you to be back and on and producing, And so the idea of transition, as you know, Tommy, because you began to really dig it, was we've got to create some space that allows our soul to make those gear changes between, stress and joy, between something that you want to do kind of slowly because you're chillaxing in the evening and making a meal, and something you do want to do fast and you're in crank mode to get a project done. We've got to allow some transition space. And for me, like I realized I didn't even pause between phone calls.
Right.
I would just go phone call, phone call, phone call, phone call. And instead of stop, breathe, go get a cup of coffee, look out the window, right? And then pick up the phone. Then hit, your next meeting or whatever. So transition's just one of those practices that we've lost in the modern madness that your soul actually needs. Like there's brain research on this, that your brain needs to reset between things.
So I know that the first time that I read this book and I started to take these principles practically, and I'm sure listeners are going to say the same thing. They're going to say, what am I supposed to cut out to transition? Like you said, the corporate bereavement's 3 days. If I don't text somebody back in 6.5 seconds, they think that I don't care. If somebody doesn't get a phone call back after the voicemail they left me that day, what do we do to be able to approach those expectations in a healthy way, maybe manage those relationships, but still make sure that we maintain a healthy soul?
Yeah. Well, and we can tie this into COVID right now too, in the thing of, everybody's telecommuting. You have more opportunity than you think you do. Mm-hmm. So let me start with just work and non-work. Like, you can create space, 3 minutes between your work and your non-work. And if you're working at home, I really recommend try and create a separate workspace. Honestly, even if it's the laundry room, and you've got your laptop on the dryer, like that's what a friend of mine's doing, and all of his Zoom phone calls are in his laundry room. But it works because when he leaves that space, he's telling his soul, I am no longer in work mode, right? But if you're just on your couch with your laptop and it's all just one thing, oh man, there's no grace to that.
Sure.
Yep. Another
So,
simple thing would be, and we could jump into this, the opening chapter of the book is this really simple practice called the 1 minute pause.
right.
And it's cookies on the bottom shelf. Like literally everybody can do this. And you can pause for 60 seconds. And what's amazing, like this is how crazy the world is, Tommy. Like we have to convince people 60 seconds is not a big ask.
I know, right?
Like, that is so messed up. But we can do it. We can do 60 seconds. It's where I had to start. This whole thing kind of came out of my burnout. We can talk about that in a second. But
Sure.
60 seconds, folks. 60 seconds. You just pause between one phone call and another, one Zoom meeting and another, lunch and getting back on your laptop or you pause. Just take 60 seconds and literally don't do anything. Like don't make your shopping list in your head. Don't answer that email in your head. Like you just pause. And it's this wonderful, wonderful grace in your day. And honestly, you will feel it. Your body will change. Like suddenly you realize your muscles were super tense and the cortisol is cranking and you just pause in between things. And the pause can be the simplest little transition device that as you build your day, I think you've been trying this, haven't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's been the fruit?
The fruit was literally the first time that I did it. I realized that I've never done it before. I think that's the simplest way to put it. I work from home. So my wife and I pastor a church in New Philadelphia, a growing and thriving church, but we've really put the emphasis on teaching and ministry rather than office hours. So all of our people work remotely, which lends itself to setting my laptop at my kitchen table, and my wife is working in her work area. And, we'll, shout an I love you across the banister every once in a while. And then every once in a while, we'll go to the same room with one another. And before we know it, 18 hours has passed. And we thought we spent time together because we were working in proximity to one another. And it's so counterfeit. It doesn't do anything. You still have yourself, with this empty space until you realize I didn't even take 60 seconds. No. I didn't even pause to transition to show my wife the attention that she deserves. So in short, the answer would be when I took my first 60-second pause, I realized that I probably hadn't taken one in about 10 years.
Right. Same here. Same here. And this is actually where God started for me. He said, John, you never stop in your day. You just go. And I love to get stuff done, and I love to engage with people, and I love new projects and create things, but it was cooking me. It was really cooking me. So for me, it began in the driveway. At the end of the day, I'd pull in the driveway, turn off the engine in my truck, but I wouldn't get out of the truck. I'd just sit there, 60 seconds, and don't do anything. And it was this incredible reset so that when I walked in the door, I was present to Stacy.
Sure.
I could be me, right? And I wasn't still all spun up from the day. And I just think, man, in the pandemic reset, and I know everybody's talking about, whoa, I've got more time to walk and, we're doing family game nights, but the truth is, this is really brutal on the human soul. We weren't meant to be isolated, and we weren't meant to be denied human touch. And so we got to take some of these practices really seriously, or we're going to come out the other side of this thing looking like refugees.
Right. Absolutely. Can you expound on what this? I think it's a good thing to talk about. What happens to the human soul after so much time of isolation and just consistent go pace, no shifting gears, no 10-second pause. I know you've studied the neurology of it. So we can talk into that, but just practically, what does somebody look like who's fallen victim to busyness?
Haggard, empty, stressed out. But the thing now is afraid. Like there is so much fear that has been ushered in through through the pandemic itself, and let's be honest, through the media, because they've got to report, newsworthy things. So you hear the bad stuff. You hear how many people died in New York today. You hear the new case of the nurse that died. You hear, and so it's let a lot of fear in, Tommy. People are experiencing higher levels of fear and anxiety, and if you are not allowing for transition, if you're not doing, soul care, if you are not living like you care about your humanity, that you will come out of this, I think, pretty wrung out.
Sure.
And
I just read this morning that suicide hotlines have an 800% increase in the incoming calls. Drug overdoses have gone up by almost 1,000%. And anxiety and depression medications are being issued at a rate faster than we've ever seen. So practically now, I guess, can we adapt this to somebody? Say you were used to working, 50 hours a week. You had a schedule, you had a little bit of structure, you had a little bit of human contact, but now you're shoved in your house and all you see is fear-mongering media. What's your day look like now, to make sure that you to make sure that you sustain some kind of health and care for your soul?
Yep. Let me give some really practical stuff. The first thing is you've got to maintain your routines. So you get up at the same time that you would have, 8 weeks ago. You take a shower, you do your hair, you get dressed, you eat right, and you keep your routines. If your evening routine was you played a little music, you got to keep doing that. If your evening routine was your favorite cooking show, you keep that up. Because those routines, you built those routines over time because they help you do well. That's why you had those routines. Don't abandon your routines. But in addition to that, now I would say you've really got to monitor your technology, because this is how we're all working now for the most part. Aside from essential workers, most of us are telecommuting now. I am, and our whole staff is, and most of the people, Zoom has just become the thing, and so because now. We were already way over plugged in, and it was messing with our brains. Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows, What the Internet's Doing to Our Brains. He almost won the Pulitzer Prize for that, because what he was showing was what the Internet's doing to actually restructure the human brain.
Wow.
And it basically to deteriorate your attention span. And make you very distracted. So you got to, now that we're all home, everybody's, so now it's, it's Netflix and it's Facebook, and then you've got your Zoom meetings and, all that. So let's just put some boundaries around it, and it's very workable. I can give you a couple things that are very simple. Sure. First thing in the morning, do not check your technology. Don't look at your phone first thing in the morning. You get to be a human being. You make a cup of coffee, you listen to some music, you say some prayers, like first thing in the morning. And I'm talking 10 minutes, folks. This isn't like I'm not asking for monasticism. Okay. Like 10 minutes, just don't get straight into the news. Don't check your voicemail. Don't look at your text threads. Don't check technology first thing in the morning. Give yourself a little space to find God and connect with him. And then in the evening, there's got to be some kind of, there's an end. And Stacy and I, you were talking about how easy it is to just keep working into the evening. You know, after dinner, the technology goes off. And Stacy and I are just looking for other ways. So we're playing games together. We're taking walks. We're listening to music. We might both be reading something different. We're reading in the same room and we're not reading online. And so just morning and evening, you can just create some technology boundaries here, and you will be amazed how good that is for your soul.
Excellent. I'm writing these down for myself. I'm struggling. I'm struggling as bad as everybody else is.
Yeah. You want a few more?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
All right. I'll give you a few more. This is a surprising one. You need beauty. You need beauty in your life. This is actually really pretty traumatizing. And one of the interesting things I'm hearing from colleagues and clients is they feel fragmented. And that's one of the things that trauma does to the human brain is it makes your brain stop talking to itself and break some of the neural connections there. So yeah, of course you're fragmented, man. This is super, super stressful, people. It really is. Let's just name it. It's not a wonderful reset. It's not. You just cited the suicide and the drug overdose. The next thing we're going to see is divorce. And it's going to be heartbreaking. But so you need beauty in your life every day. Beauty heals the human soul. And I think God knew that life was going to be pretty traumatic in the world. And so he saturated the world with beauty. I mean, it's everywhere. It's the sunlight coming through your kitchen window. It's the sound of rain on the roof. It's the city streets at night. It's the lights in the sky. It's everywhere. It's songbirds. It's the flowers in your house. It's the artwork. It's the music you choose to play. Like, you need beauty every day. And this was pre-pandemic. And so now it's like even more. Like I make very intentional. So I put these together. So I transition when I'm done with this interview. I've got a very full day, but I will walk away from my computer and I'll step out onto my front porch and I'll just stand there and just feel the breeze on my face and just be human for a moment and just let some beauty in. And it might be something as just as simple as, what are the clouds doing right now? I'm talking 5 minutes, people. This is all very available. Okay. But the more that you can get beauty into your life, particularly in this traumatizing moment, it's going to be really healing.
Sure. I like how practical you made it. A lot of people are feeling, like you said, closed in, fragmented. My wife and I, what we do is we make sure we go fishing. We sit up.
Oh, right on.
Oh my gosh. I'll send you some pictures. That's what we do. 2, 3, maybe nights a week, as long as the weather permits. But there are some states right now that have closed down their waterways, natural resources, and people are literally, our governor in Ohio has suggested that we fish and hike and stuff like that for our health.
Yes.
But there are other governors that have completely outlawed outdoor activities. So I'm so glad that you took the time to say, just walk out on your front porch. We have bird feeders out in our front yard, and you'd be surprised how many days we just stand in awe of the colors that God put on those blue jays just for us to see. So it's incredible how inundated with technology and information you can get that you go your entire life and not even be thankful or take the time to sit and appreciate those things.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing that you're not making these things out of reach. 10 minutes here, 60 seconds there, 5 minutes another time, and you don't have to go any further than your front door.
Yep.
So there's no
Yep.
excuse. There's
Yep.
no excuse.
Yeah. And,
Um,
and folks, if you're in, if you're in an apartment in New York, if you really are genuinely stuck, if you're in LA right now, watch nature shows. Like
mhm.
watch Planet Earth. I'm serious. The beauty of the cinematography and of nature will be so soothing to you. Like don't watch Die Hard. Like don't watch Mad Max. Like you, be kind to your soul, man. Like you don't get yourself all cranked up on violent films. Watch
Mhm.
nature right now because it's right there. It's right there in your house. You can do that, and it will be very healing.
So at the top of my notes here, John, I have something written, and I don't know why I wrote it. I've never wrote it for another interviewee before, but I want to know where this book came from. I have written at the top of my paper, "Get to His Soul," and what I know that I meant by that is I know that some of my best sermons have been birthed out of the most painful things I've gone through. I know that some of the best books I've read have been a realization of something that the author was going through personally. So you mentioned a few minutes ago that this was birthed out of your burnout. Would you mind being transparent with us, just so all of us can relate
Oh, of course,
and
of course.
let us know where this came from?
Yes, of course. And if folks do get a chance to read or listen to the audio book, they'll hear a lot about this. S- let me kind of trying to give it in a nutshell. I I got really cooked by the pace of life. I got really cooked by too much technology, too many projects, too much human need. I've been a therapist for 30 years and we work with people pretty deep. We do a lot of
Hmm.
very deep healing work, but now it's on a global scale. So it's like thousands and thousands of people and all over the world. And I just got so shallow, so empty. I just felt like one of those pools that you find in the desert that's like 2 more days and it's going to be evaporated. There's a little bit of water there,
Right.
but not much. And here was the thing, Tommy, was that I knew I needed God and I was looking for God. I was praying for God. I was saying, Lord, I need you. I need your love. I need your comfort. I need your help. I was asking,
Hmm.
but the epiphany that I came to was I wasn't able to receive it.
Sure. That's
And
good.
and and the reason why is, and this is what, because I was trying, I was saying my prayers, I was reading scripture, it wasn't working. Um, and and the reason is this: your soul is the vessel that God fills. And so if your soul is not well, like the desert floor is baked so hard, it literally can't receive the rain that God is trying to send.
Hmm.
It, and so for me, like I'd be playing with my grandchildren. We've got these little tiny ones, right? They're just adorable. We could a 3-year-old girl, a little 1-year-old boy. I'd be playing with my grandchildren for about 5 minutes. And then I couldn't, and then I wanted to look at my phone. I needed to check, my email. I was like, whoa, John, like literally your attention is fragmented. You're so distracted. And I had given up things that bring me joy. I love mountain biking. I stopped mountain biking. I love reading. I wasn't reading anymore. Like there were all these symptoms of, dude, your soul is not well.
Hmm.
And then there's the reach for relief, so it's too much to drink, too much to eat, binge watching, my shows and all that was just this symptom of a soul that was really weary, and a lot of unattended grief inside, and then just running, just
Hmm.
run, go fast, go faster, because you feel that you're not doing well, and so you try and compensate by go faster.
Yep. That's so true.
Yeah. So that's what I didn't even intend to write this book, by the way. This wasn't a book project that was on my roster with my publisher. I needed to find some things that would restore my soul's union with God. That's the bottom line. God is the source of life, and I needed my soul to be restored in union with Him. And so I began to discover the 1 minute pause, the grace of transition, the power of beauty. Benevolent detachment was another huge one, Tommy. Oh my gosh, it was.
That was the next on my list to ask you about.
Okay,
Yep,
all right.
absolutely.
Well, this is all before writing the book. I had no intention of writing about this. This was all. So here's what would happen. I would come to Jesus in prayer about something, and He would reply, "Give everyone and everything to me." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, Lord, I do." Now, what I was talking about was this conference that's coming up, and He would just say it again, "John, give everyone and everything to me." And He kept doing this, Tommy, for months. This went on more than a year. Give everyone and everything to me. And I realized the reason He kept repeating it was I really wasn't doing it. I was making a pretense of doing it, but so I began to use the pause. I began to use the moment in the driveway in my truck. I began to use stepping out onto my porch. I began to use those moments of just pausing to practice benevolent detachment. Benevolent because I'm not doing it in anger. I'm not doing it because I'm, resentful. It's something of kindness, but I have to release it all back to God. I've got to let it go. I've got to detach. You hear the news reports. You just said the suicide hotlines. That stuff just wrecks me. It's like, what? That's horrible. And I got to let that go. I can't carry that. And so this one practice has been the most life-saving thing of them all. This is the one is learning truly. And so here's a fun story. We built an app called the 1 minute pause, and people are using it now, and they think that we built it for the pandemic, but we built it last November, and we launched it. We launched it in December. It's free. It's on the App Store for iPhone and Android. It's called the 1 minute pause, and it guides people through this practice. And there's beautiful music and nature photography, but it begins with Jesus. I give everyone and everything to you. And we just kind of sit with that for a moment. I give everyone and everything to you. And we're at 75,000 downloads now, and we're getting 1,000 a day during the pandemic here because people need help letting it go, letting the fear go, letting the future go, like letting it go. And what all this does, here's what I was after. You asked about my soul. I wanted to find my way back to God. I wanted to find my way back to deep union with God. Not just talking about God, not just reading about God, but an actual experiential union with God. That's what I wanted. And I, benevolent detachment and beauty and transitions and getting outside and the healing of nature and all that, these things, it worked. It worked. Like I'm better. And it was only after I got better that I realized, oh man, I got to throw people a lifeline. And so I wrote this. It came out literally 1 month before the pandemic. And the Pause app and the book just look like the most kindest thing in the world from God, because people are finding relief through it.
Right. So, I have to ask a personal question, I guess. Not personal in nature, but personal for myself. One of the things that I've always heard John Maxwell say is that decisions are easy to make, but they're hard to manage. And as I'm listening to you reiterate the things that I've already been through twice in your book, I realize that I've given up some of them already. So in your process, how hard was managing the decision? How many times did you have to bring yourself back? And, are you superhuman, or is there, are you just like the rest of us? You have this day that you realize that you lost yourself. So you go a solid 48 hours, making good decisions, 1 minute pauses. Then the phone starts to ring a little more, money starts to get short, and then you just give your whole life back to the machine. What did that process look like, and how did you make it through, for normal folks that are trying to manage decisions like that?
Yep, this is funny. So we built the app. I have it on my phone, and you set your notifications, and a couple times a day, for me, it's at 10 and 2. You just get a notification that says, hey, take a pause. It's just simple, 60 seconds, just take a pause. And then you can click on it and it'll guide you through the beautiful music. And now there's days when I get that notification and it totally irritates me.
Yeah.
I'm like, stop bugging me. So look, this isn't about perfection.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta let that go. Your soul will tell you when it's not doing well. Like, you have the most wonderful barometer. You carry it around with you 24/7. Your soul will let you know when it's not doing well, and often what it needs. Mm-hmm. Like that choice to walk out on the front porch, it's almost a compulsion. Because the thing is, as you taste what life could be like, you begin to crave it, and it's a good craving. It is such a help to you. So that, there are some disciplines, like savings, that you're just not going to see the benefit from for a really long time.
Right.
That's way out there, but there are some things that are so life-giving that the benefits are almost immediate. And as your soul begins to experience some wellness, and then you go back to your former way of life, it's almost like nails on a chalkboard. Like you just literally don't like it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. I was talking to my son, who's got a very busy career, and he's on Zoom calls all day because he also is working at home now. And he said, here's his sanity thing. He does a Zoom call, and then he walks outside and chops wood. He does a Zoom call, and then he listens to some music. He does a Zoom call, and then he trims the bushes in his yard. Like, he's being very intentional, because when you do this stuff, your soul is so happy. Your soul is so much better that it will help you through this. And we forget, and we miss weeks. I haven't done the pause today. That's okay. That's all right.
The best way, the thing that sticks out to me the most is when you equated the 1 minute pause with an experience that you had with the horses on your farm. And the way that has been hewn into my brain is, you mentioned that you have like maybe some predators around the farm, and you and your wife have to go put them at ease almost every morning just because they can smell them a while off. And then they have this very distinct moment where you can tell that they're back and they're okay again. Would you tell us about exactly how that looks in the morning on your farm?
Yeah. So there's a lot of mountain lions here in Colorado, and the horses are on high alert all night. They tend to sleep mostly during the day, because on the night they're on high vigilance. And we've got bears and bobcats and stuff, but it's the mountain lions that really freak them out. Mm-hmm. So we come out and brush them, talk to them, pet them, and there's this moment where they do this deep, deep sigh. They just let out this, and it's so visceral for them. It almost works for me. I'm like, oh yeah, I was cranked up too. And so, like, I'm looking for that sigh in my own life. Like, when am I able to sigh like that each day? When do I get to let down from hypervigilant mode? And again, dear friends, like the news will put you on hypervigilant mode. Too much technology will put you on hypervigilant mode. Wondering and speculating about the future will put you on hypervigilant mode. And physiologically, if you want to protect your immune system, if you want to be strong during this pandemic, hypervigilant mode is awful. It just physiologically, it wrecks your immune system. So do the things that get you off of hypervigilant mode, and what is that for you? Is it cooking dinner? Is it standing on the porch? Is it playing some music, in your headphones? Like, do the things that you get back to that sigh. You just go.
Mm-hmm. That's been probably the most, I know there's so much information in the book, but the most impactful thing that I took away from that book was, amazingly enough, that story. Because you realize when you've been in that hyper mode for a long time and you haven't heard that out of your own soul in a long time. So I'm looking through my notes, because at any time I read a book, I make sure I'm not just, skimming through it. I'm reading through my notes from Get Your Life Back. And two of the chapters that I really liked, they were after the interlude, was surrendering the self-life and caring for neglected places in your soul. And they were both kind of longer chapters. I think they went about, I don't remember how many words each, but what does the self-life do? I guess, how are we more inclined to move towards the self-life in a moment like this? How is it affecting our soul? And how do we pull away from that? Because I think a lot of people, look at the toilet paper epidemic. I mean, that proves, just in the simple things that we're really worried about ourselves.
Yeah. Tommy, we're now into the deeper waters, because the simpler practices will do things that will really restore your soul. And they'll strengthen your immune system, by the way, and they will let you receive God back in your life. But as the book progresses, what we're moving into is actually something much deeper. In what we're looking for, an experience of a soul is united with God. Where actually the human soul is actually created for union with God. I mean, a shared existence.
I love that you keep saying that.
It's critical, gang. Like, It's everything. This is everything. The human soul was never meant to be autonomous, and it can't sustain itself over time. It's porous. And so we are meant for an existential experience of the presence of God in us, inside of us, union with God. And frankly, it's the only thing that's going to sustain people through the long haul of this pandemic, because we're not in a sprint here, we're in a marathon. And so I needed to say that to frame the next part here, because the self-life is the main thing that crowds out the life of God in us. And what I mean by the self-life, it's that part of you that so easily gets offended. It's that part of you that goes to self-preservation as a first instinct. It's that part of you that wanted to and probably hoarded food or toilet paper, right? The self-life is that part of us that during a conversation waits for the person to ask how we're doing, And we say, hey, how are you? But what we really want is for them to ask us how we're doing. Okay, so the self-life is really prone to what's going on in the culture right now, which is fear. And then next will be hatred. You'll see it. The next thing will be hatred, because fried human beings do very well. And there is, you read the news reports about the fight over masks, the global national fights, countries were fighting over medical supplies and stuff. So the next thing is going to be this acrimony, and it's the self-life, digging in, learning to surrender the self-life actually creates room in your soul for God. In the self-life, it's really a nuisance. Ultimately, it's not who we want to be. I want to be a loving person. I want to be a kind person. I don't want to be filled with envy. I don't want to be filled with offense. So that whole idea of taking up your cross daily, Jesus is referring to the self-life, self-determination, and learning to surrender that in some very practical ways creates the opportunity for union with God again, because now self-life isn't crowding him out.
I'm curious as to how this chapter found its way into this book. And you and I know that that's pretty much the foundation of satisfaction is selflessness. But I'm looking through the chapter list, and it's practical application, it's detachment, it's drinking beauty, it's 1 minute pauses, and then what made John Eldredge want to be sure that everybody understood that part of getting your life back is giving it away?
Because in what's happened prior to the pandemic, having nothing to do with it, what we have created in the world, Tommy, is the culture of the offended self.
Yeah. Yes,
It's the single most characterizing quality in our culture right now. So as a therapist, I watch the data, and there is a direct correlation between your use of social media and the rise of envy in your life. And I read that and I went, that is so jacked. Like, what is with that? You can't enjoy someone else's happiness.
Right.
You can't look at the photos of their grandchildren and just rejoice for them. Like, whoa, people. And then like, you want to dip into American politics a little bit.
Yeah,
oh man,
absolutely.
you can't even have a political conversation anymore.
Right.
Because the culture of the offended self has so taken over the air that we breathe. And I just knew, look, if you want to be well, and if you want more of God in your life, if you want that rich experience of union with Jesus, you gotta deal with the self life.
Right.
And it's not a small thing, it's a big thing.
I'm hesitant to ask because it is a big thing, but is there anything that you would practically suggest? Because some people, like I said, they're going to do fine with your first few chapters. When they get to that chapter, they'll realize they have a problem that they didn't know about. So what does step one look like to getting rid of the self-life?
Well, you can't get rid of the self-life with hostility. Here's the lovely thing. It actually takes kindness.
That's great.
And the chapter is very kind, and the book is very kind. Because what we're talking about ultimately is a very kind approach to the human soul. But in kindness, we make some very simple choices. When someone else gets an award, you cheer for them. When someone else posts their picture that they're still able to get out and kayak, on their waters, you cheer for them. You go, how wonderful. You just make these very conscious choices not to let envy and offense into your soul. Just don't let them in. Don't give it place. And what that does is it starves the self-life. It just says, look, I'm just not going to entertain you. You don't get to drive the bus anymore. So somebody said something that actually is very offensive to you. You just let it go. Let it go. Yep.
So envy and offense seem to be the telltale signs that you're living in kind of a selfish atmosphere or culture.
Yep.
Okay, so those are the barometers that you carry around. If you're easily offended or if you're often envious, you know that you've got a sick soul that needs tended to.
Get the self-life out of there, man. He doesn't get to drive the bus anymore.
That's good. That's fantastic. So, John, I know that we're coming to the end of the time that we were allotted, but I would like to ask you this question. If this was the last 3 minutes that you ever got to speak to this audience, what would you leave them with today that will help them? Not just you use the word union, and I understand what you say when you mean union, because that's, your beliefs are my beliefs. But concerning that, what is I'm having a hard time articulating this. The most sufficient, the most groundbreaking piece of advice that you could give to the human beings that are going to hear this, what would we leave them with today that are going to ensure that they move forward in victory and health with a soul that's intact rather than in shambles?
I would say begin to practice loving Jesus every day.
Yeah.
I mean, just as simple as this. You're standing in the kitchen in the morning, you're making your smoothie. You just say, I love you, God. I love you, Jesus. I love you. You just start practicing that through your day. There's nothing that will heal your life more or bring you more of God than loving him.
I've never taken, I don't know that I've ever taken any notes for myself during an interview. I have 2 pages of notes that I'm going to apply to my life after this interview. This was transformational. It's life-changing, and it's something that I'm really honored to have been a part of. And John, I can't thank you enough for coming on HonorCast. Would you?
I've loved it.
Yeah, it was
I've
good.
loved it. I've loved it. Tommy, you're a good disciple of Jesus. That you would take notes during your own podcast. That's really beautiful.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. I will tell everybody that John Eldredge was instrumental in saving my marriage between 7 and 8 years ago. So the opportunity for this to come full circle and be able to interview one of my heroes and mentors, even though he never knew who I was until I got a hold of his publicist. It's good to know as a human being that there is a man and a woman, Tommy and Shanda, who are still madly in love, that would have probably never made it past year 4 had it not been for the ministry of John Eldredge. So, John, I really can't thank you enough for what you've done in my life and for allowing me this time with you today. And I'd love to have you back. And if you're ever in Ohio, I'd love to have you at Legacy Church.
Yeah, let's go fishing.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen a 50-pound flathead catfish, but we've got them here.
Oh, I'd love that. That sounds awesome.
Absolutely. John,
Very
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, talk to you later. Sounds awesome.
Absolutely. John, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, talk to you later.